guys, what's back to the video? So with the release of Black Adam, the DCEU now has 12 movies. So in this video, I'm going to be ranking them all. And before we get into these and you're in here and you want to check out all my full thoughts, spoiler and spoiler free on Black Adam, you can click the link in the description down below. And also if you're new in here and you enjoy all my movie and TV show reviews, reactions, and breakdowns, make sure to subscribe and notifications on so you don't miss any time I upload a video or go live. Both always get more time. Let's get right into it. So starting it off for me in 12th place is going to be Suicide Squad. This movie is overall terrible. One of my least favorite movies I've ever seen. But I will say the soundtrack for this movie did have me excited. The marketing was really cool, but again, this was just an overall letdown. I don't even remember much of this movie. I've literally only seen it once in my entire life, and that is with the bottom three of these movies. I've only seen them one time, and honestly, I would consider the bottom four to really be the only massive stinkers that the DCU has ever had. But yeah, starting off the list, number 12, Suicide Squad. Again, just not a good movie at all. And in 11th place is another movie that's just plain not good, and that is Justice League 2017, also known as the Justice League. We all know the drama and beef and all this stuff going on behind the scenes of this movie. It is just not a good product. It feels unfinished. It feels rushed. The story is very incomplete. Again, it does just feel like chunks of Zack Snyder's Justice League, obviously, stuff that his vision, he didn't actually get to complete. And it's kind of sad that this movie actually got released, and it felt like the part at the DCU where we're like, okay, now we know they're rushing it, and we know that they're going to fail now. I definitely felt like BVS, for me at least, was that point where I was like, okay, I think they're going a little bit too fast here, but Justice League proved that once again for me in 2017. The most memorable thing from this movie is the CG removal of Superman's mustache, which will go down in pop culture history. But that's besides the point. Next up in 10th place is Wonder Woman 1984. This is one of the more recent DCU releases, and I was very disappointed by this movie. You guys will see as I get higher up on this list, I absolutely love Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is one of my favorite solo superhero movies ever made. I love every aspect of that movie. But Wonder Woman 1984 pretty much takes every aspect of Wonder Woman and throws it out the window. I really hope that in Wonder Woman 3, they don't keep this reliance of having Steve Trevor in the story, because I feel like that was really the downfall of this movie. I feel like they should have just gone for a completely different story in general. On top of that, Cheetah is just not a good villain overall, and overall, this movie is just a massive disappointment and a huge step down for Wonder Woman. But moving on, in 9th place for me is going to be Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. I recently watched the Ultimate Edition for the first time, and it's way better than the theatrical cut, and I will be honest, I was a lot younger when the theatrical cut came out, and I'm going to be honest, I fell asleep during the theatrical cut, and that's crazy because it's a Batman versus Superman. I, as a little kid, should be absolutely enthralled by this movie, and it was plain boring to me. I don't like that this is our introduction to Batman. I don't like this is the next step for Superman. And like I said when I was talking about the Justice League, this feels like the first step in the DCEU where I was like, okay, they are rushing this way too much. They're just trying to catch up to all the other cinematic universes, and they're messing up their character development. And I still stand by that through Batman v Superman in the Ultimate Edition. I don't think it really does much else for character development. I just felt like the action and overall pacing was a lot better in the Ultimate Edition. That's why I don't necessarily hate this movie's guts, but again, it's still the last of the stinkers in the DCEU in my opinion. Moving on, next up on the list in 8th place is Birds of Prey. I haven't seen this movie since it released, but I was a fan of it when it came out. I just feel like I enjoyed the top 7 a lot more than number 8. I think Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn is one of the best castings in the entire DCEU, let alone one of the best comic book movie castings of all time, and that's why I love the Suicide Squad so much. But this movie, I thought it had cool action. I was just never really invested in Harley Quinn's character and the repercussions of obviously Joker in Suicide Squad and that kind of stuff. I just wasn't a big fan of that story, but overall, again, it's a very enjoyable movie. 8th place, not trying to say anything bad about it, just sucks that it's grouped so close to this bottom 4. Right above that though, in 7th place is the newly released Black Adam. I genuinely don't think this movie is bad by any means. I think critics are just bashing on it. This is my type of movie. Non-stop action with, yes, a pretty basic and linear story, but it gets the job done for being a big action blockbuster, and I really, really love it. Again, I feel like since the DCU only has 12 movies, it being at number 7 makes everyone think, oh, I didn't like it that much. I genuinely love Black Adam. It's one of the most entertaining movies I've seen in theaters in years. I was having so much fun with this movie. Sometimes, yes, it is a little bit too much action. Sometimes, yes, the story does suffer, but I definitely just feel like at the end of the day, Black Adam is an absolutely fun time, and I think everyone should go check it out in theaters just for the experience. Again, my biggest issues come in with the story. I do think Sabak is a cool villain, but I just think the story is so one note that it kind of takes away from how intricate and cool the mystical and magic side of Sabak could really be. And again, if you want to check out my full review for Black Adam, I did an initial reaction which was spoiler free, and then a spoiler review and breakdown with the ending explained, all that kind of stuff. You can check the link description down below to watch all those videos. But next Next up in 6th place is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, I was really debating switching 6 and 7. I do think Zack Snyder's Justice League on a technical level, story-wise, of course, it's a way better movie than Black Adam. But I've always been conflicted about Zack Snyder's Justice League, strictly because of the fact that it's 4 hours long. I've never revisited this movie since I initially watched it, and the last 45 minutes of this movie are just set up for movies and stories that we're never going to see fulfilled. It is just so annoying to go back to this movie because it just doesn't really lead to anything. And so I'm very conflicted on even counting this as a DC Extended Universe movie, because most of this movie is, number one, stuff we've either seen in Justice League or setting up for a future that we're never going to see. So again, very conflicted on how to feel about this movie. Again, I've watched it one time, watched it when it released, did a full review, and I talked about it for a while because, again, I think on a technical level, story-wise, very interesting. These characters are done so well. Cyborg, especially, in this movie is one of the most entertaining and compelling characters in the entire DCEU, but at the end of the day, are we ever going to actually see these iterations of the characters again? No, which kind of makes the movie feel pointless to me. With that being said, I want to move on to 5th place, and that is going to be Man of Steel. I used to be a big hater of Man of Steel, and I rewatched it recently. I still don't think it's the best thing in the world, but I still think it is an overall good movie. I don't think it's anything that's like people are saying one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. I don't believe in any of that crap. I don't think, though, it's one of the worst superhero movies of all time, which is what I used to think. I think it's just in the middle now. I definitely just think it's a good to average movie. You know, there's good action scenes. The color grading, a little weird at times, definitely throws me off. I'm just not a big fan of this iteration of Superman. I'm not a big fan of the serious Superman. I'm more of a fan of the community-driven, the more happy, and I don't know. I feel really weird saying it, but I don't like this very dark Superman. I love when characters go dark, even like characters that I love, like Doctor Strange in the MCU. I love when he has that dark horror side tapped into him, but Superman to me is not a character that needs to be like that, and that was Zack Snyder's vision. He got to do what he got to do, and I'm excited for Man of Steel 2 to see the different version of this character and what they can fulfill, because Henry Cavill has a lot of acting talent, and I don't want him to just be stuck with this super dark and gritty version that, in my opinion, is not that great. The score for this movie is also phenomenal. I probably like the score more than the movie itself, but again, the action is great, the choreography is great, the story is good overall. It definitely feels like more of a coming of age story for the first half of this movie rather than just a Superman movie, but it is what it is. Again, just a good to average movie overall. But moving on, in 4th place is going to be Aquaman for me. I love this movie. 4th place and up. These movies are genuinely movies that I want to rewatch on like a monthly basis. I love these movies so much. I think Aquaman gets hated on a lot. I definitely think Aquaman, honestly, this might be a hot take. I think Aquaman is top 3 best looking comic book movies of all time, just because of the underwater sequences and just the choreography. I love Black Manta. I'm so excited for Aquaman 2 because the characters in this world building was so good. It's been so well done, and I'm so excited to see how they expand Atlantis throughout the rest of the DC Extended Universe and how they just play out this world, because again, Aquaman got me so invested into this character. I love Jason Momoa's Aquaman. Again, one of the best superhero castings ever. This movie to me is just a hidden gem. I feel like a lot of people hating it because the story's a little bit average. That is true, but I still think everything else, all the other pros outweigh it by miles. Next up in 3rd place is a movie that I mentioned before, which is Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman, like I said before, I think this is one of the best solo introduction superhero movies of all time. I think Gal Gadot is pretty good as Wonder Woman. I think she looks best for the role, but the acting, especially, maybe it's just 84. I think I'm just biased for Wonder Woman 1984 being so bad, but I really do like her in Wonder Woman. I think the action in this movie is phenomenal, and yes, it suffers a little bit from a very CGI heavy final act, which doesn't feel like it fits in with the rest of the movie. Yeah, that is the case, but I definitely feel like the first 2 acts of this movie are just near perfect, pretty much 10 out of 10s in my opinion. I mean, the first act, it builds up the mascara very well, and then the second act, it's like a fish out of water story, and then she goes through the trench and all of that kind of stuff. It's just such great visuals, it's such a great style, it's such a great tone, and the character of Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, is so well paired with Steve Trevor, and I like the ending, the resolution, but just the fight overall, it wasn't really that intriguing to me. I actually rewatched this one less than a week ago from recording this video, and I really still like the movie a lot. Again, it's just that final act definitely drags it down just a bit for me, but my top 2 are very close. I switch them around pretty much anytime I rewatch either one of the 2 movies, but in 2nd place right now for me is Shazam. I love this movie so much. It's one of the only 2 DCEU movies that's a 9 out of 10 for me. Of course, number 1 is a 9 out of 10 as well, but speaking on Shazam, I think this movie is so great. The cinematography, the acting, the story, the heart, the effects, the soundtrack, Everything brings this movie together to be literally a near perfect superhero movie. Yes, it's a little bit kiddish at times, but that's just the vibe of this movie, and I really like what they did here. Billy Batson is one of the most intriguing characters, and obviously Shazam, he is such a cool character. His suit, the whole family dynamic, it's such a heartfelt story. I really don't know how to describe how I feel about this movie, because every time I watch it, I'm just like enthralled by it. I'm automatically just invested into this family, invested into these characters, invested in the situation. I definitely feel like the villain might be like the weakest point. And again, the third act, I think generally the third act is pretty good, but the introduction, like the change from the second to third act where they're fighting in the sky and stuff like that against the Sylvia dude, that's a little bit weird. And that's where I dock the most points. It's just like the pacing's a little odd all over the place, like whenever you're going from act to act. But other than that, this movie again is a near perfect superhero movie, and I absolutely love it. But with that being said, in first place for me is James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Again, I go back and forth between 1 and 2 a lot, but this one ends up taking the cake 99% of the time. It easily has the best array of characters that we've seen in any of the DCEU movies. It consists of some of the best castings that we've had in the DCEU. And again, the characters themselves are just so compelling. And within the first like 20 minutes, you see so many characters get killed off, and then you get introduced to a new team. You get to learn so much, and the storytelling behind these characters and this overall story is so great. James Gunn directed the hell out of this movie. In my opinion, just directing and style-wise, I think this movie is miles ahead of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I prefer the Guardians movies just because of the characters themselves, but just the way this movie is stylized by James Gunn, in my opinion, is literally perfect. That might be a hot take, but I don't really see a flaw in terms of tone and style with this movie. I mean, there are definitely some of the weird writing and like the jokes don't always hit for me. And I say this a lot, but my gold standard for comedy isn't that high. I laugh my ass off watching Deadpool and Deadpool 2. So obviously I was laughing a lot during the Suicide Squad, but I don't know if that really considers it to be good writing, because if I was looking back at Peacemaker as well, though I love the way that they transitioned the character, I definitely do think that the character and the writing is a little bit too immature at times. But yeah, I love the Suicide Squad. Again, my favorite DCEU movie, and I do go back and forth between Shazam and the Suicide Squad, but at the end of the day, the Suicide Squad takes the cake for me. But that's it for my ranking of the DCEU movies. Let me know your ranking for all 12 movies in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.